In this demo, we're going to show you how you can bring in any of your ServiceNow data directly into Turbot Guardrails so that you can have those records close to your governance policy to then help you bring it forward to automatically tag your resources with that context from ServiceNow, or it can help dictate different security posture or FinOps controls that you enforce across your Amazon, Azure, Google, GitHub, Kubernetes, etc. environments that Guardrails supports. And in a prior demo, we already showed you how to sync a ServiceNow instance in and manage configurations, or maybe you want to sync data from Guardrails to ServiceNow. That integration approach also works. But in this case, I want to take data from ServiceNow into Guardrails. And I've already set up some tables here for users and applications and cost centers, etc. The new policies that we've recently came out with is now making it super flexible to bring in any CMDB CI table, any system table, any custom table that you've created or defined. Now you can simply, just in a simple policy here, put the table name, and then Guardrails will then start to sync that into our environment. And so in this case, I have a CMDB CI service table, has about 42 records. I want to bring this data in the Guardrails because then I want to push this context down into tagging and then use that as further context to then dictate data protection policies or encryption policies, etc. And so the service table has things like the criticality of the service, who's it used for, who owns it, which will be great tags to then put onto my cloud resources. And so since I have that policy set to sync it, that's already within my CMDB, and all of those records are there so that I have that information about the record close in my environment. Now, all of that is full text searchable. You can see all the activities. You can look at whether or not that's in good syncing health. And so all the same foundational features that you have in Guardrails are also true for these records being managed by Guardrails. Now, if I wanted to take it even further and say, well, I don't want the full CMDB CI service table, I just want to query out specific resources. Well, one, you can always filter within Guardrails. Like, let's say I only wanted to look at the SAP resources. You can change your views in here and filter and search. But if you didn't want to sync all those 42 records there, you can use the query policy that then filters out. So you can use encoded query strings from ServiceNow, and then you can do things like, maybe I only want to bring in those SAP records, so I can name it like SAP, and then that will filter out only those resources are being synced in the Guardrails. So flexible, especially if you have tables that have thousands or tens of thousands of records, but you really want to focus that down. Simple policy here that you can define per table to do that filtering. Now, back at the service table, let's take a focus on how we can manage policies now with that data in there. I have the ServiceNow data in, but now I want to do something with that data. And so here I've set up a grouping of policies that will take a tagging template and use that data to bring it down into tagging my S3 buckets in Amazon, and then also use that context to decide whether or not I'm going to version the bucket or not based on the criticality of the business service. Within the tagging template, I can bring in that business service data. And let's say I want to bring in the name of the business service and then the criticality, the environment, and the owner. I can just look that up from the Guardrail CMDB, apply that into my tagging template. And now that's part of my definition for how Guardrails is going to dynamically tag that bucket. So whenever someone creates a bucket or updates a bucket, Guardrails is going to react in real time and then update the tags based on the context from ServiceNow. I can also use that information. So once that information is tagged on those resources, in this example, I can take that tagging information and then use it as context about whether or not the bucket should be versioned or not, as an example. So in this case, if the criticality is most critical, I want to enable bucket versioning. And if it's not, maybe I don't care about bucket versioning and I can suspend it or disable it. So as an example, this SAP Enterprise Services, right now it's at most critical, and that's automatically being tagged down to this bucket. So this bucket here is enabled for versioning because I have that criticality set to most critical. So those tags are being synced in, managed on the bucket, as well as the versioning based on the context of the tags. If I made a change on the bucket, Guardrails will fix those configurations to match what's in ServiceNow. And then also what's true is that if I make an update in ServiceNow, that's going to automatically tag the bucket, and it might change the versioning based on the posture. So in this case here, if I changed this from not most critical, let's just say somewhat critical, committed that, now this record is updated. And now that record is somewhat critical as a field. That's then going to ship out to Guardrails. It's going to update that record. And then from there, Guardrails is then going to trigger the other controls. It's going to then tag. It's then going to update the versioning. So we can monitor that in Guardrails. So as an example here, SAP Enterprise Services, that's its own record within Guardrails. So I could see all the configuration details. I can look at whether or not the control is healthy for syncing. I can also look at all the activity. And so here we can see that Bob, so myself, I just was in ServiceNow. I updated that resource so I could see the configuration drift here of me taking, most critical business criticality from 1 to now 2. And so that change is recorded in the Guardrails inventory, which is then going to trigger these controls. We can look at, so this particular bucket that we updated, this Acme Demo 3, if I just refresh the activity page, we're going to see a bunch of activity that had happened based on that change. So for example, that bucket there was automatically updated. So it went to alarm because it dictated that change, and then it updated the tags. So here, now the tags is no longer most critical for that. It's now number 2. And so Guardrails picked up that change within ServiceNow, and then it updated the tags on the resource. Now the tags are accurate. So it alerted and then fixed it and moved to okay. But then it said, well, now your bucket versioning is no longer accurate. It should be suspended because it's no longer critical. So then it moved forward and it suspended the versioning, and essentially the Guardrail role came in and moved it from enabled to suspended. So anything's possible. This is just a demo example, but it shows you the power of bringing in context from your ServiceNow environment close to your Guardrails policies, and then you can then use that data as you see fit to manage your posture or to apply more context down to close to your resources. If you're interested in these features, feel free to connect with us at turbot.com/start.